Despite having more means of communication than ever before, humanity no longer knows how to talk to one another, not without resulting in gross disrespect and sometimes even violence. When I was in high school, I hated talking politics, and I actively went out of my way to avoid people who did. I didn't realize how naive that was until a piece of legislation rolled around that directly affected me. And what that made me realize was that communication and the peaceful exchange of ideas is at the core of our democracy. And since that time, since I've become politically active and motivated, I've realized that in Western civilization, our communication with one another is incredibly rude and unkind, and the definition of uncivilized. In my opinion, a big cause of that is what's called echo chambers, and I'll dive into that in a little bit later. Over the next couple of minutes, I'm going to be talking about the problems associated with echo chambers. Then I'll talk about them themselves and a solution that each of us can do today to break down those chambers in our own lives. Partisanship is at an all-time high, and civil discourse is at an all-time low. We have to look no further than Brexit and the 2016 election cycle to understand that our world is incredibly tense and divided. The Wall Street Journal's Washington bureau chief expressed that the consequences of uncivil discourse are felt very real in Washington, going on to say that lawmakers who are either engaged in or intimidated by the shout fest that has become political debate find it harder to talk with each other, which means it's harder to find consensus or even compromise. In the past couple of decades, we've seen next to no improvement. Jonathan Haidt, a social psychologist and professor at NYU, when asked if he thought liberals and conservatives were getting any better at understanding each other, he flat out said, "We're getting worse." And we've been getting consistently worse since the 1990s, and especially so in the Bush and Obama administrations. With the civility of debates and conversations eroding, the very fabric of our democracy is beginning to show signs of fraying. And stopping this requires change and an understanding of not just the problem, but ourselves and each other. Now, echo chambers are a result of one group holding a specific view and another group not being allowed to express their views to that group. They actively keep those views away from them and shut them out. They get tunnel vision, and that results in an incredibly narrow worldview, an incomplete worldview. And these are caused by our psychological tribe mentality, the media's focus on ratings rather than truth and education, and social media algorithms. I'll dive into each of those individually. First, our subconscious tribe mentality is inherited by our parents and we get it from our upbringing and our religious affiliations and political party, any group that we associate with on a positive level. We have a tribe with them. Carolyn Miss, a 3 times New York Times best-selling author, wrote this on her blog: "The tribal mentality effectively indoctrinates an individual into the tribe's beliefs, assuring that all believe the same. And what this does is it creates an intense us versus them climate." Second, media companies' chief concerns, like most businesses, is profit and ratings. They create headlines. They design their headlines to elicit emotional responses, not for education. And this is not a new issue. In 1996, The Atlantic's James Fallows wrote this: "The discussion shows that are supposed to enhance public understanding may actually reduce it by hammering home the message that issues don't matter except as items for politicians to fight over. Some politicians in Washington may indeed view issues just as tools to use against their opponents. But far from offsetting this view of public life, the press often encourages it. The result is that we don't care about each other. We don't care about the other person on the other side of the computer screen. We don't care about our own family member across the dining room table at Thanksgiving time that holds a different opinion than us. And politicians in Washington, they don't care about the person sitting a few feet away from them across the aisle." The third cause of this is algorithms that social media giants use. They determine what content to expose us to, and they do so by tracking our behaviors, such as liking things and sharing things. And we contribute to that even further by blocking people that we don't like, only associating with people that we like and agree with, only following news sources that we agree with. And this results, again, in a very narrow worldview. A Facebook-sponsored peer-reviewed study published in the journal Science concluded that the power to expose oneself to opposing viewpoints lies first and foremost with individuals. And this issue, as such, can only be resolved with individuals. Personal responsibility, not government, is what's going to solve this. Through introspection, listening to others, and expanding our media consumption to include opposing viewpoints, we can break down echo chambers. First, we need to look inside ourselves. We need to understand our tribe's influence on us. We need to understand our tribe's strengths and weaknesses, and we need to be willing to be wrong. Second, we need to sharpen our own beliefs by reading books not sponsored by mainstream media companies. We need to not rely solely on newspapers and TV talk show hosts and social media. We need to actually go to like a library and pick up a book. And third, we need to purposefully include opposing viewpoints. This means following political activists from opposing parties, and we need to interact with their followers in the comments section and genuinely listen to them and try and understand them. And we should even be reading their source material. We should be reading their newspapers and their books, and just trying to understand why they believe what they believe. This plan is incredibly practical because it places the burden of responsibility for change on individuals, which means we can all affect change immediately. Over time, this plan makes our opinions more individualized from our tribes. It encourages empathy, and because of that, it sharpens our own persuasive skills. Over many years, the increased tribe mentalities and political polarization in Washington and the media and even in our own homes has resulted in civil discourse breaking down into an embarrassing state. But our democracy relies on the peaceful exchange of ideas, not embarrassing one another for political points. So recognize your bias, read more books, and listen to those you disagree with. Echo chambers can be broken.